It is almost time for the Goodreads Choice Awards, and that means it is time for me to predict the Goodreads Choice Award nominees. I've already done a video predicting the winners for the next 3 Goodreads Choice Awards in the fantasy category. If you want to see that video, I will have that linked in the cards and in the description. But for this video, we will be talking about all of the nominees, not just the winners. We don't have the Goodreads Choice Award eligibility for 2023, although we do have the eligibility for 2022, which gives us some pretty good clues. First off, it gives us the cutoff date of November 14th, 2023 for eligibility into the 2023 Goodreads Choice Awards. It also tells us a couple other things that is very important. Firstly, the books must have at least a 3.5 average rating, and 2 books in the same series cannot be nominated in the same category. However, an author could have multiple works nominated in the same category if they aren't in the same series. This will come in important as I go through my predictions for the nominations. This video will be focusing on the fantasy category because that is the category that I am the most familiar with, although I did have a couple picks that I decided were more likely to be science fiction or more likely to be YA. So I will be making a separate video of books that I think are going to be nominated in the other categories, although I'm not likely to fill out every single category, but I am planning on filling out like all of the fantasy books. I'm pretty sure I have more than 20 books on this list and only 20 books can make it. So we will see how many of these actually make the list, but let's dive into it. The first book I think has a potential of making the list is The Hurricane Wars. This is a romantasy book that I've been seeing a lot about and this might be recency bias because this book does come out in October. So I maybe am saying that I've seen this book around a lot because I've just seen it recently. The thing is, if there is a romantasy category, which I'm still holding out hope that one of these years we will get a romantasy category separate from adult fantasy, I think this book can make the list. If there's not a romantasy category, some of the romantasy books still are going to make the list. This might not be one of them. However, The Hurricane Wars came out October 3rd and it already has 2.3 thousand ratings and over 64,000 people have added this book to their shelves. So I feel like it has a fairly strong chance of making the Goodreads Choice Awards, though there are a lot of books that are on here with much higher numbers than that. So if there's a romantasy category, this one's it. If not, it might fall off the list. The next book I have on this list is Swordcatcher, which is also an October release, but this is a Cassandra Clare release and a Cassandra Clare adult fantasy release, which means I am pretty sure Swordcatcher is going to make the Goodreads Choice Award nominations. It already has over 96,000 people adding it to their shelves, and it has 1.6 thousand ratings, although it did literally just come out. So I think this has a very strong possibility of not only making the Goodreads Choice Awards, but possibly even making the second round. I am going through the romantasy books first, and the next romantasy book that I think is going to make the list is The Fall of Ruin and Wrath. This has over 14,000 people rating this book on Goodreads, which is a fair amount for a book that came out this year. And it has over 97,000 people shelving this book. I think this book has a strong chance of making the nominees even if there's not a romantasy category. And the next book is the 5th book in the Blood and Ash series. That is A Soul of Ash and Blood. This book is almost definitely making the Goodreads Choice Award nominations. This has over 37,000 ratings and over 130,000 people shelving this book. This is gonna be a nomination. It might even make the second round of voting. Yeah, definitely. But a romantasy book that's ranked even higher than that is The Ashes and the Star-Crossed King. This book has over 93,000 ratings, which is a lot of ratings for a book that came out this year. And it has been shelved over 218,000 times. This is almost definitely making not only the initial nominations, but making it to the second round. Like, this one's one to watch out for. And for my final romantasy prediction, of course, Fourth Wing is going to be nominated, and not only is it going to be nominated, it will win whatever category it is nominated to. Most likely the fantasy category, because we've not been given any indication that there will be a romantasy category, but I can hold out hope anyway. And this book will win by a long shot because it has over 616,000 ratings and has been shelved almost 1.5 million times. Now, the second book in the Fourth Wing series, Iron Flame, does come out before the Goodreads nomination cutoff date, but since last year's eligibility said that only one book from a series can be nominated, I think obviously Fourth Wing is going to be the one nominated, and Iron Flame will not get a Goodreads Choice Award nomination. Now moving into my general adult fantasy predictions, I will be going from the books with the least amount of people shelving it to the books with the most amount of people shelving it. We are not entirely certain how these books get nominated, but I do think popularity plays a huge factor. I'm not sure that it's just number of people shelving it. Maybe it has to do with rating to review ratio or rating to shelving ratio or something like that. Not really sure, but some of these books I'm a little less confident of. Starting off with He Who Drowned the World, this book has 2.5 thousand ratings and 41,000 people shelving it. The first book in this series did get a Goodreads Choice Award nomination previously. I think it has a chance of getting a Goodreads Choice Award nomination, but honestly, it's not as popular as I expected it to be and not as popular as some of the other nominations on this list. So I'm not super confident, but this one might sneak into the nominations. My next prediction is a Martha Wells book, and Martha Wells had 2 books come out this year, and unfortunately, I think Witch King is going to be the one that gets the nominations. Even though Witch King hasn't been super well received, and I've mostly seen meh or negative reviews for this book, it still manages to be above the 3.5 star rating, which is the cutoff for the Goodreads Choice Awards, and it has over 9,000 people rating it on Goodreads and over 89,000 people shelving it on Goodreads. Despite those high numbers, I don't really expect Witch King to make it past the first round of voting. Now, the book that I would like to see on the nominations from Martha Wells is System Collapse. Systems Collapse is going to be published on November 14th, which is the cutoff date, so it sneaks in just in time, and it is the 7th book in the Murderbot Diaries. Unfortunately, I don't think enough people have shelved this book to actually make it onto the Goodreads nominations, because only 35,000 people have shelved this book. Now, it's not out yet, so it makes sense that there's only 800 ratings for this book, but still, I don't think that's quite enough to sneak this book on there when Martha Wells has another book that came out this year that has much higher stats. And speaking of books that probably don't have high enough stats to make it on the Goodreads Choice Award nominations, I don't think The Sunlit Man or Secret Project Number 4 by Brandon Sanderson will make the nominations. And I kind of have 2 reasons for this. First off, we've not seen anything in the eligibility criteria that says that a self-published book can't make the nominations, but we have seen self-published books that were picked up by traditional publishers and then made the Goodreads Choice Awards in the year that it was published traditionally. And we've not seen a self-published book make the Goodreads Choice Award nominations. So The Sunlit Man doesn't get its traditional publication until January next year, which is well after the Goodreads Choice Awards cutoff date. On top of that, just looking at the stats for The Sunlit Man, I know it just came out. So it does have 6,000 ratings, which is very good for a book that just came out, but it only has 22,000 people shelving it, which I don't feel like is popular enough to actually make it nominated. On top of that, 3 of the 4 secret projects are Cosmere books, and I don't know if that will count against Brandon Sanderson. If only one book from a series can be nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards, do the secret projects count as a series if they're in the Cosmere, or does each individual series within the Cosmere count separately? Because I'm pretty sure these are like standalones within the Cosmere. I don't know how they're going to count that. The next least likely Brandon Sanderson book to make the list is The Frugal Wizard's A Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. This book has 26,000 people reading it on Goodreads, which again is a very high number for a book that just came out this year. However, it only has 63,000 people shelving it, which I just don't know if that's high enough to make the nominations. It does exceed the qualification of the 3.5 average rating with an average rating of 3.79. So I would say it's definitely eligible, but I just don't think that it's actually popular enough to make it. Surprisingly, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter's stats look very similar except for their star rating, of course. So the average star rating for Yumi and the Nightmare Painter is 4.54, which is very high, and it has 22,000 people rating it, which again, this book came out only a few months ago, so those are very good stats. However, it only has 65,000 people shelving it. So I don't know what Goodreads criteria is, but I'm just not sure any of these stats actually are high enough to make the Goodreads Choice Award nominations. However, Trust of the Emerald Sea far exceeds all of these stats, and I will be getting to that whenever I go through this, and I am going through these with number of people shelving it. I do want to acknowledge Brandon Sanderson is having a book in the Skyward series come out this year, though that book is published after the cutoff date, so that would be eligible for the 2024 Goodreads Choice Award nominations. The next book on my list is one that I thought for sure would absolutely make the nominations until I looked at the stats, and I think this book still has a chance of making it. It's just a lot lower than I expected. And that book is Bookshops and Bone Dust. Now this book is not out yet, but it only has 69,000 people shelving it. Now it does have a current average rating of 4.34 stars and 1.7 thousand people shelving or rating it on Goodreads. I do know there's been a lot of people that got the advanced reader copy for this book, so I would totally believe that at least some of those ratings are people who have actually read this book and aren't just excited for this book coming out, although this is Goodreads, so obviously some of the ratings are just people that are excited for the book. I think this has a chance of sneaking in the nominations, but the competition's kind of stiff this year, and these stats are not quite as high as I expected. The only thing is this book isn't actually released yet, so it is possible after it's released, I think it's about a week before the cutoff for the Goodreads Choice Awards, these stats might skyrocket. The next book I have on my list is What the River Knows. This has been a book that I have seen everywhere. It seems to be a very popular book. The only thing is I'm not actually sure if it's going to make the fantasy category. It might make the historical fiction category, although whenever I was reading the summary for this book, it sounds like there's enough magical elements that it might make the fantasy category. This book also isn't even out yet. It comes out October 31st. So it already has 1.1 thousand ratings and 74,000 people shelving it. So this is another one that as soon as it comes out, it is possible that those stats will increase and that might push it higher in its eligibility. Next book I think has a good chance of making it is God Killer. This book was published in the UK in January, but that doesn't count for Goodreads. What counts is it was published in the US in September. So the US publication date is the one that Goodreads looks at, but this book has over 9,000 ratings and has been shelved 82,000 times. So I think this book has a good chance of making the fantasy nominations. The next book I have is The Book That Wouldn't Burn. I honestly wasn't sure if this book was popular enough to make the nominations, but whenever I look at the stats, it's actually higher than some of the books that I thought would make it for sure. So I guess we will see when the nominations actually come out. This book has over 7,000 people rating it with an average rating of 4.17 stars and over 85,000 people shelving it. So I think it stands a decent chance of actually making the Goodreads Choice Award nominees for fantasy. Now, I'm not sure any of these actually have a chance of making it past the first round voting, simply because there's books that have much higher stats than these. So I guess we will see. The next book I have on my list is Inkblood Sister Scribe, and I think this is a book a lot of people are sleeping on. I think this book has enough magic that it will be put in the fantasy category, although it was marketed to a broader audience. It was basically marketed towards general fiction, which does give me a little bit of a doubt that it will be in the fantasy category, but there's definitely a lot of magic in this book. And this was a Reese Witherspoon book club book, so I feel like this is definitely making the Goodreads Choice Award nominations. This book has over 18,000 ratings and almost 99,000 people have shelved this book. And now we're getting into books that I feel very confident are not only going to make the Goodreads Choice Award nominations, but might actually make it to the second round of voting. And the first one I'm going to have on my list for that is Atalanta by Jennifer Saint. At least some Greek mythology retelling is going to make the Goodreads Choice Award nominations. And I feel like Atalanta has probably some of the highest chances of making it. Jennifer Saint has made the nominations previously, and this book has over 9,000 ratings and has been shelved over 101,000 times. The next book I have on my list is The Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. V.E. Schwab has done well in the Goodreads Choice Award previously, although I don't think she's actually won the adult category. I would have to double check that. Her book that she released this year, however, has over 4,000 ratings and has been shelved 117,000 times. And the next book on my list is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi. This is the book that I want to win the Goodreads Choice Awards. This is one that I have read and I absolutely love this book. I think it's going to be one of my favorites that I read this year. And I don't think it's going to win just because there's other books that have much higher stats than this one, but I definitely think this is going to make the nominations and has a chance of making it to the second round of voting. So The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi was a book of the month book, which I think helps it have wider appeal, or at least more people know about it. It has been rated over 24,000 times and has over 151,000 people shelving this book. Another book I'm very confident about is A Day of Fallen Night. This is the prequel to Priory of the Orange Tree, and this book has over 19,000 ratings and has been shelved over 181,000 times. I'm very confident that this book is not only going to make the nominations, but make it to the second round of voting. I hope I don't say that about more than 10 books, because only 10 books can make the second round of voting. And now we finally get to our Brandon Sanderson book that I think actually has the highest chance of being a nominee, and that is Tress of the Emerald Sea. This book has over 69,000 people rating it and over 224,000 people shelving it. Even if multiple Brandon Sanderson books are not allowed in the fantasy category, I think this one has the highest chance just because the stats for this book are so much higher than the other books that he published this year. The next book, I think it has a strong chance of making the nominees. I'm not quite sure if it's going to make the second round of voting, but I have been seeing a resurgence from this book, and that is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Now, we are coming up on the release of the second book in this series, which is probably why there's been a resurgence, although the second book is released after the cutoff date, so that one might be one to watch for 2024 nominees. This book has over 37,000 people rating it and over 225,000 people shelving it. So this one seems like there's a strong chance it will get a nominee and possibly make the second round of voting. The next book I have on this list is Hellbent, which is the second book in the Alex Stern series by Leigh Bardugo. Leigh Bardugo has done very well in the Goodreads Choice Awards previously, and the first book in this series, Ninth House, was the winner the year it came out. Though this book is not going to be the winner this year if it's going up against Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing is a giant standing above all of these books. But I expect this book will make the second round of voting. Might it be a runner-up? Who knows? This book has over 85,000 people rating it and over 300,000 people shelving it on Goodreads. So there you have my predictions for the fantasy category on Goodreads. Let me know if you think I missed any books. And definitely watch out for my next video where I will be talking about the nominations in categories aside from fantasy. I will also be doing a live reaction. I already made the pre-scheduled live up on my channel, so you can go click the notify me for that whenever the Goodreads Choice Awards actually drop. And I hope to see you in another video. Happy reading.